Imagine a seemingly perfect world where you never forget a single thing. Every book you read is perfectly quotable. Every single face you pass on the street is permanently logged.
Every mundane conversation recorded in high definition.
On paper, it sounds like an absolute superpower, but then you really have to think about the dark side of that.
The inability to let things go.
Yeah. What if you also couldn't forget every mistake you've ever made, every physical pain, every sharp humiliation or heartbreak experienced as vividly as the exact second it happened? We are deconstructing what memory actually is, uncovering why your brain is actively, deliberately trying to forget things all the time.
And exploring the physical and philosophical consequences of a world where we never forget.
Which is such a wild concept because it highlights this fundamental truth about human neurobiology, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A brain that captures everything with equal intensity. I mean, it isn't a highly functioning brain. It's actually a paralyzed one.
We just default to thinking about the benefits of retaining stuff.
Right, but we severely underestimate the burden of an unfiltered past.
Which means to really understand why a perfect memory might actually be a curse, we first have to completely dismantle how you, the listener, probably think memory works.
Because most people have a very specific structural idea of it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're like me, you imagine memory as a physical space, like a warehouse or an archive in a basement, or maybe just files on a computer hard drive.
The classic filing cabinet analogy.
Right. You experience a day, the brain hits save, and then when you want to remember it, you just search the archive and pull up the file.
That analogy is incredibly intuitive, but biologically, it is entirely backward.
Wait, entirely backward?
Yeah. The brain is not an archivist. It's a highly active, constantly working editor.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because that completely upends how we structure our lives.
It does. Your brain doesn't passively store the past in a little neuronal lockbox. It's aggressively rebuilding the past every single time you reach for it.
So it's not like opening a locked PDF document that stays exactly the same no matter how many times you view it.
No, none of it.
It's more like a Wikipedia page that you accidentally edit and resave every single time you look at it.
That Wikipedia analogy is dead on.
Yeah.
When you recall an event, you aren't opening a read-only file. You are literally re-triggering a specific neural circuit.
And just by looking at it, I'm changing it.
Exactly. The very act of re-triggering that circuit makes it chemically vulnerable to change. Memory is an active reconstruction.
Wow.
So your current emotional state, the new context you've learned since the event happened, even the environment you are sitting in right now.
All of it bleeds into the memory.
All of it bleeds into the reconstruction of that memory before it gets consolidated again.
I mean, I guess this explains why two people can experience the exact same day, side by side, and remember it entirely differently.
Yes. Or why you remember your own childhood differently today than you did, say, 10 years ago.
So memory is essentially a constantly edited draft.
Precisely.
But that begs the next logical question, right? Who or what is doing the editing?
That's the hippocampus.
Because something has to be tying all these loose floating details together. So I remember my 10th birthday party as one coherent event and not just a random jumble of cake, balloons, and my cousin crying.
Right. The architect of that coherent event is this seahorse-shaped structure deep in the brain called the hippocampus.
A seahorse, okay?
Yeah. Sort of like one. You can think of the hippocampus as a temporary sorting station for episodic and spatial memory.
We should probably define those for the listener.
Oh, sure. So episodic memory is the narrative timeline of your life, the what, who, and when. Spatial memory is the physical mapping of your environment, the where.
Okay, got it. The timeline and the map.
Right. When you experience something new, the hippocampus takes all the sensory inputs firing across your cortex.
Like the sound of the balloons popping, the visual of the cake, the emotion of excitement.
Exactly, and it binds that context together into a unified episode.
So it weaves the isolated threads into a single tapestry.
That's a great way to put it. What's fascinating here is a process called consolidation.
Consolidation? Okay, what is that?
Well, in the moment, that memory is very fragile. Short-term memory is really just temporary electrical activity bouncing around your neural networks.
Like a holding pattern.
Yes. To turn that electrical buzz into a permanent long-term memory, the hippocampus has to train the cortex to wire those disparate pieces together permanently
And how does it do that?
by actual physical construction in the brain.
Wait, hold on. When you say physical construction, do you mean learning literally changes the physical shape of the brain?
It literally does.
Like, if I learn a list of French vocabulary words, my brain is literally manufacturing a physical protein to build a bridge.
Yes.
But how does electricity translate to protein synthesis? That sounds like science fiction.
I know, but that is the exact mechanism. This is a phenomenon known as synaptic plasticity.
Synaptic plasticity.
Right. When a strong electrical signal, like a focused thought or a novel experience, fires through a neuron, it forces calcium ions to flood into the cell.
Okay, calcium floods in.
And that calcium acts like a messenger. It travels all the way down to the nucleus of the neuron and flips on specific genes.
It turns on your DNA.
Exactly. Those genes then direct the synthesis of new proteins. These proteins physically travel back to the synapse, the gap between neurons, and build structural reinforcements.
Wow. They build actual scaffolding.
They add new receptors, they thicken the connection, they physically change the architecture so that the next time a signal tries to cross, it's effortless.
That is just mind-blowing. Electricity triggers calcium, calcium triggers DNA, DNA builds proteins, and suddenly I remember how to say apple in French.
It's an incredible biological feat.
But, I mean, if our brains are expending this immense amount of physical energy and biological resources to build these structural bridges, we have to ask a pretty big question.
Why forget?
Yeah. Why does it then intentionally throw so much of it away? Because honestly, whether I'm prepping for a big meeting or trying to remember the passcode I set 5 minutes ago, forgetting feels like a massive biological glitch.
Oh, it absolutely feels like a glitch in the moment. You feel like your hardware is failing.
Exactly, like I'm losing my mind.
But from an evolutionary standpoint, forgetting is not a failure. It is a highly engineered filter.
A filter. Yeah.
In fact, forgetting is an active metabolic process.
Wait, it takes energy to forget.
Yes. You have immune cells in your brain called microaglia that literally prune and eat away weaker synaptic connections while you sleep. The brain spends energy to forget.
But wouldn't we all be better off if we just retained the useful stuff? Like, what is the evolutionary advantage of a microglial cell eating the password I just reset 10 minutes ago?
Because perfect memory does not equal better thinking.
Okay, say more about that.
Well, imagine if you remembered every single detail of every single day with equal agonizing intensity.
Like the thought experiment we started with.
Right. The temperature of the room you were in a decade ago, the exact arrangement of pebbles on a driveway you walked past on a Tuesday in 2015.
I would go crazy.
You would completely drown in the noise.
Yeah.
Forgetting allows the brain to generalize.
Visualize how?
It allows you to recognize the concept of a chair without being bogged down by the memory of every specific chair you've ever sat in.
Oh, I see. It abstracts the rules from the data.
Exactly. It clears up physical resources. But most importantly, forgetting allows your brain to update outdated models of the world.
Which we constantly need to do.
Right. Ideal memory isn't a memory without loss. Ideal memory is a memory with the right selection.
Okay, that makes total sense on an evolutionary level. The filter keeps us sane.
It does.
But despite forgetting being this healthy, necessary feature, human nature and modern science still desperately wants to hack the system.
Oh, of course. We always want to beat our biology.
We want to enhance our learning, prevent memory loss. So here's where it gets really interesting. We start talking about neurostimulation and smart pills.
The holy grail of neuroscience.
Right. Because surely we're close to a chemical solution. We have stimulants that keep us awake. Why can't we just engineer a molecule that locks in information?
It's an incredibly seductive idea. We all want a limitless pill.
Totally.
And there is real research being done using electrical or magnetic stimulation to try and alter the activity of neural networks, or looking for pharmacological agents that enhance consolidation.
So what's the holdup?
The fundamental barrier is that memory is not a single button you can push.
No.
It is not a light bulb that you can just turn a dimmer switch and make brighter.
It's too complex.
Heavily distributed. It's across the entire cortex. It's tied to our amygdala for emotional weight. It relies on our attention networks, our sleep cycles, our autonomic nervous system.
So you can't just isolate the remember French vocabulary circuit and turn the volume up to 10 without affecting the rest of the house.
Exactly. And the collateral damage of doing so would be profound.
Collateral damage? Like what?
Well, if we create a blunt biological tool to universally enhance memory consolidation, say, a pill that forces your brain to build those protein bridges for everything you experience while it's in your system, We don't get to choose what gets enhanced.
Oh man, so everything gets locked in.
Everything.
Yeah.
We might accidentally amplify traumatic memories. We might solidify irrational fears or deepen the sting of minor humiliations.
Wow.
You might make the memory of a slightly awkward conversation at work so chemically cemented in your brain that it triggers a full-blown panic attack every time you recall it. We need the flexibility to let minor traumas fade.
Which means bad memory isn't always a broken memory system.
No, it's often functioning exactly as it should. The role of memory is not static across a lifespan.
So what is a teenager's brain trying to do that a 70-year-old's brain isn't?
Well, in youth, your memory is fundamentally about building a map of the world. You are learning language, social rules, physics, boundaries.
Right, taking it all in.
But importantly, building that map requires the immense flexibility to forget wrong hypotheses.
Oh, because kids get things wrong all the time.
Exactly.
Well,
When you are young, if you can't easily overwrite outdated information with new facts, you just become a warehouse of wrong answers.
yeah.
You have to be able to let go of childish models of the world to make room for adult complexity.
That makes a lot of sense. And as we move into adulthood, the map is mostly built, so the goal shifts.
Yes. In maturity, memory equates to responsibility. And
Responsibility.
is your career, your family, your ability to keep promises and honor financial commitments. You aren't just mapping the world anymore. You are maintaining your place within it.
But then as we transition into old age, the stakes shift again entirely.
They do.
But wait, if an older person loses their memory, they don't necessarily lose their skills. I mean, a dementia patient can sometimes still beautifully play the piano. So why does memory loss in old age feel like the loss of the person entirely?
Because of the difference between procedural memory, like playing the piano, and episodic memory, which, as we said, is the story of your life.
The narrative.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, in old age, episodic memory becomes an existential issue. It is the bridge between who a person was and who they are right now.
That is so profound.
When you look at restoring or protecting memory for a patient with neurodegeneration, you aren't doing it to make them a more productive worker. It is the profoundly humane task of preserving the self.
Preserving the self.
It's about maintaining the ability to look at the world, look at your family, and say, I am still me. Without that narrative continuity, the self fragments.
That is incredibly heavy, and it leads perfectly into a really wild, slightly terrifying frontier.
The synthetic stuff.
Yeah. If preserving the self is the ultimate existential goal of memory, what happens when our internal biology starts merging with external machines?
It's a huge ethical minefield.
Because for you listening to this right now, we already have a primitive form of synthetic memory.
Oh, definitely.
Your phone remembers your entire calendar. The cloud remembers every photo you've taken for the last 10 years. You've outsourced your recall.
We have outsourced a massive amount of our cognitive load, and mostly that's been beneficial. We don't need to memorize phone numbers anymore.
Right.
But the looming crisis, the real paradigm shift, happens when external memory directly merges with internal memory via neurointerfaces.
So plugging it in.
Literally, we're talking about brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs, that don't just sit in your pocket, but actually plug into your neural circuitry, communicating directly with your hippocampus.
Okay, let's ground this. If an algorithm is actively monitoring my neural activity and it decides to start prompting me on what details from my workday are important enough to save,
Which it would have to do to filter the noise.
then who is really going home to my family at night? Me, or the algorithm's curated, edited version of me?
The algorithm's version.
Yeah.
And that is the danger. If a machine interface acts as a secondary hippocampus, filtering, organizing, and prioritizing what gets consolidated into long-term storage, it isn't just acting as a helpful digital assistant.
What is it doing?
It is actively curating your personality.
Wow.
Because we are the sum total of our routine memories. If an external algorithm decides what gets consolidated and what gets deleted based on, say, a productivity metric, it is literally ghostwriting your autobiography.
That is terrifying. And beyond the personal identity crisis, let's talk about the societal impact of this.
It's just as bad on a macro scale.
Right. Let's say these synthetic memory enhancements become safe, effective, and commercially available. What happens when only the ultra-wealthy can afford to artificially enhance their memory or their kids' memories for competitive advantages in school and business?
This raises an important question, maybe the most vital question, for neuroethics in the next century. Memory technology could rapidly become the ultimate technology of inequality.
Which is saying something, given where we are now.
We already navigate immense wealth gaps and education gaps. But imagine an insurmountable biologically engineered cognitive gap.
An engineered gap.
A society where one class of people literally has the hardware to learn complex subjects in a fraction of the time, retain information perfectly, and recall data instantaneously, while another class is left relying on natural, fallible, easily exhausted biology.
It fundamentally alters the concept of human equality.
Exactly. It dictates who gets into universities, who holds economic power, and ultimately, who gets to be autonomous.
So what does this all mean for us right now?
Well, we aren't quite there yet.
Right, before we arrive at this dystopian future of brain implants and total cognitive inequality, how do you, the listener, optimize the biological hardware you currently have? What are the actionable takeaways based on the actual science of how memory works?
The science points us directly back to foundational, unglamorous truths, but now you understand why they work.
The basics.
The tools to optimize your memory right now are sleep, focused attention, repetition, finding meaning, and managing chronic stress.
No magic limitless pill, just the basics.
But the basics are biological mandates. Think back to the synaptic plasticity we discussed earlier.
The structural bridges.
Right. If you are chronically sleep deprived, you are physically halting the protein synthesis required to build those structural bridges, and you are preventing the microglia from pruning the noise.
Because that all happens during sleep.
Yes. And if you are constantly switching between screens, your hippocampus never gets the uninterrupted context it needs to bind the who, what, where, and when together. It just receives fragmented static.
And what about stress?
If you are chronically stressed, cortisol acts like a blockade against consolidation.
That's incredible.
Trying to remember more while exhausted, distracted, and stressed is literally fighting a war against your own cellular biology.
You're just working against yourself.
Memory does not start with a hack. It starts with creating the physiological conditions where your brain is allowed to physically change its own shape.
Okay, let's bring this all together. Memory is not a dusty archive where you passively file away the past.
Definitely not.
It is a dynamic, highly active physical reconstruction of the self, constantly being rewritten by the hippocampus and the literal structural rebuilding of your synapses.
Beautifully summarized.
And forgetting is not a flaw in your hardware. It is a vital filter and a superpower that prevents us from drowning in our past, allowing us to update our view of the world.
Essential for survival.
And as tempting as it is to wait for a microchip to hack the system, the ultimate human challenge isn't figuring out how to remember every single detail. It's mastering the art of choosing what deserves to stay and creating the right biological environment through sleep, focus, and managing stress for our brains to do what they evolved to do best.
And realizing that our natural limitations are often our greatest protective mechanisms.
Exactly. But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over based on everything we've explored today.
Oh, what's that?
We learned that recalling a memory isn't just viewing a file. It physically rewires the neural circuit every single time you pull it up.
Right, active reconstruction.
And we learned that your current emotional state actively edits that file before it resaves it. So what if we use that biological quirk deliberately?
Deliberately editing the past.
What if, instead of running away from them, we intentionally recalled our most embarrassing, painful, or humiliating memories, but actively forced ourselves to view them in that moment with profound self-compassion, empathy, and maybe even a little humor?
Oh, wow.
Could we use the brain's natural mechanism of active reconstruction to literally, physically re-edit our own personal history so it hurts a little less? Think back to that seemingly perfect world we talked about at the beginning, the one where you never forget anything, the good or the agonizing.
It's all about what the memory means to you now.
Exactly. Maybe the real superpower isn't having a perfect, unblemished record of the past. Maybe the real superpower is having the biological ability to change what the past means to us today.